The rifle kicked against her shoulder, and the bullet vanished into white. Nothing. Wren Calloway held her breath, held her position, waited for the hit indicator downrange to flash red. It didn't. Miss. The range instructor's voice crackled through her earpiece, flat and final. Target 1, no impact. She adjusted, found the second target through her scope. The wind hit her from the left like a physical blow. 40 knots screaming across the qualification range at Fort Denali with the kind of fury that made grown men turn their backs and wait for better conditions. Wren didn't turn. She fired. Target 2, no impact. Behind her, boots shifted on frozen ground. The body language of men watching someone fail and feeling confirmed in everything they already believed. Target 3. Her crosshairs wavered, wide. Target 4. The bullet found steel. Hit. Her final round. Hit. 2 out of 5. Minimum passing score was 4. Trainee Calloway. The instructor's voice carried across the range even without the radio. Weapons safe. Step back from the line. Wren safed the rifle. Stepped back. Stood at attention in snow that came up past her ankles, while the wind tried to push her sideways. Now the words came. Knew it. That was Hollis, 3 positions down. He didn't bother whispering. Called it week 1. Should have washed her out before Christmas. Driscoll. Louder. Someone she couldn't identify. Waste of a slot. 16 weeks. That's how long she'd been at Fort Denali. 16 weeks of waking at 0430, running in darkness, lifting weights designed for bodies twice her size, and fighting every single day to prove that a girl from a Montana cattle ranch had what it took. And now, on the final qualification, the last gate between training and service, the cold had beaten her. Not her mind, not her courage, just the cold. Sergeant Thorne approached. He was the kind of instructor who never raised his voice because he never needed to. Respected by everyone, hard but honest. The worst person to hear bad news from because you couldn't hate him for delivering it. Calloway. Sergeant. He looked at her. She could see him choosing words carefully, which meant the words were going to hurt. You've got more grit than half the men in this company. I mean that. Thank you, Sergeant. But grit doesn't change physics. He held up his hand against the wind. Feel that? 42 knots sustained, gusting to 50. You weigh 118 pounds. The rifle weighs 14. Your body cannot stabilize a firing platform in these conditions. Every time the wind hits you, your center of gravity shifts. You compensate, but the compensation introduces tremor. Tremor at this range means miss. I understand, Sergeant. It's not about want, Calloway. It's not about heart. It's math. He paused. Your body mass to wind resistance ratio falls below the threshold. You know this. Yes, Sergeant. Pack your gear. Bus to Anchorage leaves at 0600. You'll process out there. He started to walk away. Stopped. For what it's worth, if this range was indoors, you'd have qualified top 5. I've seen your scores in controlled conditions. You're a shooter, Calloway, just not in this environment. Then he was gone. Back to the line. Back to the trainees who had passed. Back to the world that had room for them and not for her. Wren stood in the snow for a long time after that. She didn't cry. She'd made a decision about that in week 3 when Hollis had found her crying in the latrine after a particularly brutal ruck march and had told every man in the barracks. She hadn't cried since. Wasn't going to start now. She picked up her gear and walked to the barracks. The building was nearly empty by 2100. Most of the company had gone to the rec hall for final night celebrations. Music, laughter, the sounds of people with futures in the military enjoying the last night before those futures began. Wren sat on her stripped bunk, duffel bag half-packed. The only light came from a bare bulb overhead that flickered every time the wind gusted hard enough to stress the power lines. Her phone sat on the mattress beside her. 4 messages. Dad. How'd it go, kiddo? Your mom would be proud no matter what. Call when you can. Her sister Bryn. A photo. Bryn in front of a mirror wearing an army t-shirt she'd bought online. The text, "Matching with my big sis. Did you pass? Send pics. I told everyone at school my sister is basically a soldier now." Amy, her best friend from home. "Girl, how did qualification go? Call me." Another from Dad, sent 3 hours ago. "Haven't heard from you. Getting worried. Everything okay?" Ren turned the phone, face down. She couldn't answer any of them. Not yet. Not until she figured out how to say the words. "I failed. I'm coming home. It's over." Funny thing about failure, it doesn't hit you all at once. It seeps in like the cold. First you feel it in your fingers, then your arms, then your chest. And by the time it reaches your core, you realize it's been killing you slowly for hours, and you just didn't notice. She started folding clothes. Mechanical movements, stack, fold, pack. The muscle memory of someone who'd been preparing to leave places her whole life. The lights flickered again, harder this time. The wind outside sounded like a freight train running full speed into the side of the building. Then a different sound, rotor blades. Ren stopped packing, tilted her head. Helicopters didn't fly in this weather. The base had grounded all air assets 6 hours ago when the storm hit severe warning levels. She'd heard the announcement herself, but that sound was unmistakable, growing louder, coming closer. She moved to the window, wiped frost from the glass with her sleeve, pressed her face close. A helicopter, black, no visible markings, no running lights, dropped out of the blizzard like it had been born from the storm itself. It touched down on the parade ground with the precision of a pilot who'd done this in worse conditions and found them boring. Rotors kept turning. Snow blasted outward in a perfect circle. A figure stepped out, walked toward the barracks, not running, not hurrying, walking with the steady pace of someone who owned every piece of ground beneath his feet. The barracks door opened. No knock. Commander Declan Hale stood in the doorway, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Not because of the cold coming in, because of the man himself. He was not what she expected. Not tall, maybe 5'10", lean, late 40s, maybe early 50s. The kind of face that had been weathered by things worse than wind. His eyes were the color of glacier water, pale, clear, and absolutely still. Those eyes found her immediately, like he'd known exactly which bunk, which corner, which shadow she'd be sitting in. Ren Calloway. It wasn't a question. She stood anyway. "Sir." He stepped inside, closed the door. The sound of the storm muffled but didn't disappear. "You failed qualification today." "Yes, sir." He looked at her half-packed duffel, at her hands still red and stiff from the range, at the phone lying face down on the mattress. "Why?" The question landed like a punch she didn't see coming. No one had asked her why. They'd told her why. She repeated what she'd been told. "Insufficient body mass to stabilize the firing platform in extreme wind conditions, sir. Center of gravity displacement exceeding compensatory threshold. Tremor introduced through muscular fatigue exacerbated by..." "Stop." She stopped. "That's their answer. I asked for yours." Ren met his eyes. Something in them, not kindness, not exactly, but an absence of the judgment she'd been drowning in all day made her honest. "I'm not big enough, sir. I'm not strong enough to hold the rifle steady when the wind is trying to push me off my feet. I trained harder than anyone in this company, and it didn't matter. My body can't do what they needed it to do." "Wrong." She blinked. "Your body can't do what they needed it to do. That's a different statement than what you think it is." He moved into the barracks, slow, looking at the empty bunks, the cleared lockers, all the spaces where people who'd passed used to be. "How long can you hold your breath, Calloway?" "Sir?" "Answer the question." 3 minutes, sir. 3.5 on a good day." "Resting heart rate?" 52, sir." "Under stress?" "Never been above 64, sir, even during the stress inoculation exercises." He turned back to her. And today on the range, when you missed those shots, what did you feel? This question was different. It wasn't tactical. It was personal. Military officers didn't ask personal questions. Not like this. Nothing, sir. Nothing? The cold had gone past pain, sir. I wasn't feeling anything. Not frustration, not panic, not anger. Just quiet. Something shifted in his face. The nearest thing to approval she'd seen from anyone in uniform in 16 weeks. Sit down, Calloway. She sat. He pulled a tablet from inside his jacket, activated it, held it where she could see. Thermal satellite imagery. A mountain range she didn't recognize. Snow-covered ridges, deep valleys, and clustered heat signatures on a high ridgeline. Red and orange dots against blue-white terrain. What you're looking at is a denied area 92 miles inside hostile territory. Enemy command post on a ridge at 10,500 feet. They're coordinating a weapons pipeline that has killed 37 Allied personnel in the last 4 months. Wren studied the image. Her brain shifted automatically from failure to analysis. Fortified position, sir. They control the high ground. Correct. Limited approach routes, all exposed. Also correct. A ground team would be visible on thermal imaging from, she calculated, at least 2 kilometers out. 3, actually. They have advanced thermal scanning. He closed the image, looked at her directly. Every team we've sent has been detected and driven back. 2 operators were killed last month, 3 more wounded. Sir, why are you showing me this? Hale leaned forward slightly. Because conventional teams generate too much thermal signature, too much noise, too much movement. The enemy expects groups. They scan for groups. Their entire defensive network is designed to detect and eliminate teams. He paused. I need one person, one shooter, someone who can be inserted alone. Move 18 kilometers through hostile territory without being detected. Set up a position within 300 meters of that command post and remain motionless for up to 8 hours in minus 35-degree conditions. Another pause. I need someone whose body temperature runs low enough to defeat thermal scanning. Someone whose heart rate stays below detection threshold. Someone who can control their breathing so completely that they produce 0 visible vapor in sub-zero air. He let that sink in. I need someone the enemy's equipment literally cannot see. The silence that followed was so complete, she could hear her own heartbeat. 54 beats per minute. Steady. Even now. What do you mean, sir? Exercise whiteout. January. Your squad was tasked with establishing a concealed observation post during a blizzard. You remember? She remembered. The frozen creek bed. The water that had soaked through her gear. The 5 hours of lying absolutely still while her squad moved on without her. They forgot about me, sir. They did. Your squad leader didn't notice you were missing for 2 hours. When he finally called it in, the observer team ran thermal scans to locate you. He held her gaze. You didn't show up on any scan. The equipment operators recalibrated 3 times, ran diagnostics, replaced a sensor unit. They concluded the scanners were malfunctioning. They weren't malfunctioning, sir. No, they weren't. You were simply invisible. He stood. Every other trainee in that exercise was actively trying to hide, digging in, building shelters, creating heat, movement, noise. You did nothing. You just lay there, breathing, still. And in doing nothing, you disappeared from every detection system we had. Wren remembered the creek bed. She hadn't been trying to be invisible. She'd been trying to survive, trying to stay warm by staying still the way her grandfather had taught her during hunting trips in the Montana winters. Don't fight the cold. Become part of it. Sir, I appreciate what you're saying, but I just failed basic training. I'm not qualified. You're not qualified for their mission. Hale moved to the door. I'm offering you mine. The helicopter's rotors were still turning outside. She could hear them through the walls. The helicopter leaves in 5 minutes. Pack survival gear only. No personal items. No phone calls. No one can know about this. Sir, my family. Your family will be told you're being held for additional administrative processing. Standard delay. They won't worry for 72 hours. And after 72 hours, he didn't answer that question, which was itself an answer. Sir, I need to understand something. Ren stood. You came here in this storm, in a helicopter that shouldn't be flying, for me, a trainee who just washed out. Why? Commander Hale opened the door. The storm screamed in. Snow swirled around him like a living thing. Because every shooter I've sent to those mountains was the best, strongest, fastest, most qualified on paper, and every one of them failed. The enemy detected them, tracked them, drove them back. He looked at her one final time. You are none of those things. You are small, you are cold, you are quiet, and on a frozen battlefield where being seen means being dead, you are the most dangerous weapon I have ever found. He stepped into the storm. 5 minutes, Calloway. The door swung shut. Ren stood in the empty barracks, heart rate 56, hands still cold, brain processing at a speed she didn't know she possessed. She looked at her duffel, her phone, the messages from her family she hadn't answered. She looked at the door. Then she thought about something she hadn't allowed herself to think about in 16 weeks. She thought about home, about Montana, about a day 21 years ago when everything changed. November 2008. She was 7 years old. Her mother Marlo lay in the hospital bed with skin like paper and eyes that had already started looking past this world into the next. Stage 4 cancer. The doctors had stopped using words like treatment and recovery and started using words like comfortable and time. Ren sat beside the bed holding her mother's hand. It felt like holding bird bones. Fragile. Temporary. Promise me something, Marlo said. Her voice was barely more than breath. Anything, Mama. Promise me you'll be strong for your dad, for Bryn, for yourself. I promise. I know you will. Marlo smiled. The morphine made her eyes unfocused, but the smile was real. You've always been my quiet one, my little ghost. You see things other people miss. You feel things other people can't feel. She squeezed Ren's hand with what little strength remained. Don't let them make you loud, baby. Don't let them make you something you're not. The world needs quiet. The world needs people who can be still. 3 weeks later, Marlo was gone, and Ren went silent. Not the normal sadness of a child who'd lost a parent. Something deeper. She stopped talking in school, stopped playing with other children, stopped being present in the way she'd been before. Her father Garrett watched this happen with the kind of helplessness that comes from being good at solving problems and facing one that has no solution. He was a man built by the Army Rangers and refined by 2 decades of Montana winters. Hard hands, harder life. He'd served in places whose names he couldn't tell his family and done things he couldn't talk about even if he wanted to. But watching his 7-year-old daughter disappear into herself after her mother's death broke something in him that combat never had. 2 months after Marlo died, Garrett took Ren out to the ranch's old shooting range. January, 15 degrees, wind that cut through every layer like it had a personal grudge. He set up a target at 200 yards. Your grandpa Silas taught me something in Korea, Garrett said. He handed her a rifle scaled down for a child's frame. Most men think war is about being loud, being aggressive, being seen. He helped her position the rifle against her shoulder. But Grandpa learned different. He learned that the quietest man in the forest is the one who survives, the one who can be so still that even the birds forget he's there. That's the one who comes home. I don't want to shoot, Daddy. I know, but I need to give you something to hold on to, something that's yours. Your mama's gone. I can't fix that, but I can teach you what my daddy taught me. He crouched beside her, his hand on her back. Don't fight the cold, Ren. Become it. Let it into your lungs. Let it slow your heart. Let it make you part of the mountain. She fired, missed by 3 feet. Good. Now do it again. But this time, don't try so hard. Just breathe. Just be. She fired again. Closer. They stayed on that range for 2 hours. Wren fired until her fingers were numb and her shoulder ached, and she hit the target more often than she missed. When they walked back to the house, Garrett carrying both rifles, Wren said the first complete sentence she'd spoken in 2 months. "Can we do it again tomorrow?" "We can do it every day." And they did. Winter, 2015. Wren was 14. She'd been hunting with her father since she was 8, but this was different. This was the hunt Garrett had been preparing her for since that first day on the range. Elk season. Late December. The kind of cold that makes your lungs hurt when you breathe too deep. They hiked into the high country before dawn, found a position overlooking a valley where elk were known to move. Set up in a natural depression in the rocks with a perfect sight line. Then they waited. 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours. Wren didn't move, didn't shift position, barely blinked. She'd learned over the years that hunting wasn't about the shot. It was about the waiting, the absolute stillness that came before. Her father had taught her that patience wasn't passive. It was the most active thing you could do. It was a choice you made with every breath to remain exactly where you were, to become part of the landscape, to let time pass through you instead of fighting against it. Hour 8, the elk appeared. A bull, massive, 800 yards across the valley. Garrett whispered so quietly she barely heard it. "You're shot." Wren's heart rate was 48. It had been that low for the past 3 hours. Her body temperature had dropped to the point where she couldn't feel her fingers, couldn't feel her toes, but she could feel the rifle, could feel the trigger under her finger. She found the elk in her scope, watched it move, watched it pause, watched it turn broadside. The wind dropped from 15 knots to 3. She fired. The elk dropped. Garrett didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, 800 yards, first shot, no correction. They hiked down to the elk together. When they reached it, Garrett knelt beside the animal, put his hand on its flank. "Your grandpa Silas told me something once. He said there are 2 kinds of soldiers, the ones who fight because they want to, and the ones who fight because they can't not." He looked up at Wren. He said the first kind are dangerous, but the second kind, the ones who do it because it's in their bones, because something in them understands violence in a way other people don't, those are the ones who change wars. "I'm not a soldier, Dad." "Not yet." Wren blinked. The memory faded. She was back in the barracks at Fort Denali with a choice to make. She grabbed her cold weather gear, stripped the duffel to essentials, survival equipment only, left her phone on the bunk, face down, messages still unopened. She walked to the door, put her hand on the handle. In 5 minutes, she would be on that helicopter. In 2 hours, she'd be falling through darkness into enemy territory. In 12 hours, she'd be lying motionless on a frozen ridge, doing the one thing she'd always done better than anyone: disappearing. But before she opened the door, she allowed herself one more memory. The last thing her father had said before she left for basic training. They'd stood in the driveway at dawn, her duffel already loaded in the truck, Bryn still asleep inside, the Montana sky starting to lighten over the mountains. "You know why I taught you to shoot?" Garrett said. "To give me something to hold on to after Mama died." "That's part of it, but there's more." He looked at the mountains. "When your mama was dying, she told me something. She said you were different. Said you saw the world in a way other people don't. Said you could be still in a way that scared her sometimes, because it was like you weren't there at all." He turned to her. "She made me promise I'd help you understand that gift, that I'd teach you it wasn't a weakness, that being able to disappear, being able to become nothing, that's not something to fix, it's something to use." "I don't understand." "You will." And now, standing in the barracks with Commander Hale's helicopter waiting, with a mission that shouldn't exist for a soldier who wasn't qualified, Wren understood. Her mother had seen it 21 years ago. Her father had been preparing her for it ever since. Commander Hale had recognized it in a training exercise that everyone else thought was equipment failure. She wasn't too small. She wasn't too weak. She wasn't wrong for the military. She was exactly right for a war nobody else could fight. Wren opened the door and stepped into the storm. The cold hit her like a wall. She didn't fight it, didn't tense against it. She let it in the way she always had and felt her body temperature begin its slow descent toward invisible. The helicopter waited, rotors turning, Commander Hale already inside. She climbed aboard. The door closed behind her. The aircraft lifted off immediately, banking hard into the blizzard. Fort Denali, the place that had measured her and found her wanting, disappeared beneath white. Wren Calloway had failed basic training, and she was about to find out that failure was the only qualification that mattered for what came next. The helicopter banked hard, and Wren's shoulder slammed into the cabin wall. She grabbed a handhold, steadied herself, and looked across the dim interior. Commander Hale sat strapped in, tablet on his knees, face lit by the pale glow of the screen. Two men occupied the bench opposite her. SEAL operators. She could tell by the way they breathed. Controlled, slow. The kind of calm that came from years of walking into places where calm was the only thing keeping you alive. Neither of them looked at her. "Gentlemen," Hale said without looking up, "this is Shadow 1. The larger of the two SEALs, square jaw, neck like a fire hydrant, glanced at Wren for exactly 1 second, then turned to Hale. "Commander, with respect, she hasn't finished basic." Noted. "She's a trainee." Also noted. "We're sending a trainee alone into a denied area where 2 qualified operators were killed last month." Hale looked up from the tablet. "Petty Officer Brennan, what happened to those operators?" The SEAL's jaw tightened. "Thermal detection. Enemy picked them up at 2 clicks. Mortar fire within 90 seconds of identification." "And why were they detected?" Silence. "Because they were 220 pounds of body heat moving through -30-degree terrain. Their thermal signatures lit up like bonfires on every scanner the enemy had." Hale turned the tablet toward Wren. "She won't." Brennan looked at Wren again. Longer this time. She met his gaze and held it. Didn't flinch. Didn't look away. "How old are you?" he asked. 23. "Ever been shot at?" "No." "Ever killed anyone?" "No." "Ever spent a night alone in hostile territory?" "No." He turned back to Hale. "Commander, petty officer, I didn't bring her here because of what she's done. I brought her because of what she is." Hale pulled up the thermal satellite imagery. "Brief her." Brennan stared at Hale for a 3 count. Then something in his expression shifted. Not agreement, compliance. There was a difference, and everyone in that cabin knew it. He leaned forward, pulled the tablet closer, pointed. "Karak Mountain Range, 92 miles inside hostile territory. Your insertion point is here. Valley floor, elevation 6,000 feet. Your target is here. Ridge position, elevation 10,500. Distance between insertion and target, 18 kilometers. 18 kilometers through what? Wren asked. Through hell. The second SEAL spoke for the first time. Younger, quieter, name tape read Voss. Enemy patrols rotate through the valley on 4-hour cycles, at least 3 teams of 4. They know we've been trying to get eyes on that ridge. They're hunting for us as hard as we're hunting for them. Wren studied the imagery. What's the command post structure? Brennan answered. Semi-permanent, reinforced, thermal shielded on 3 sides. 8 to 12 personnel at any given time. Guard rotation every 90 minutes. Disciplined, professional. Who are they? Hale cut in. Not your concern. What matters is what they're doing. That command post coordinates a weapons pipeline responsible for 37 Allied casualties in 4 months. The field commander on that ridge, call sign Viper, is the operational brain. Remove him, and the pipeline collapses. Remove him, Wren repeated. If the opportunity presents, primary mission is observation, intelligence gathering, patrol patterns, communication schedules, supply routes. Secondary mission is interdiction. Hale's voice dropped half a register. If you get a clean shot at Viper, you take it. And if I don't get a clean shot, then you lie there until you do, or until 72 hours pass and the next weather system moves through, at which point we extract you. Ren let that sink in. 72 hours. 3 days on a frozen ridge. Alone. No backup. No support. No one coming for her if things went wrong. Questions? Hale asked. She had 100. She asked the one that mattered. What's my extraction plan? The cabin went quiet. Even the engine noise seemed to fade. There isn't one, Hale said. Not until the mission is complete. And if I'm compromised? Secondary extraction point. 18 kilometers northwest of your position. You make it there on your own. On my own? Yes. Voss shifted in his seat. Brennan looked at the floor. Sir, Wren said, if I'm compromised at the observation point and I need to move 18 kilometers through hostile territory with enemy forces alerted to my presence, what's my realistic survival probability? Hale didn't hesitate. Low. The word hung in the cabin like smoke. But higher than zero, Hale added, which is more than I can say for the last 4 operators I sent. He reached under his seat and pulled out a hard case, set it on the bench between them, opened it. Inside was a rifle unlike anything Wren had seen, compact, matte black, suppressor integrated into the barrel, the kind of weapon that existed in small numbers for specific purposes and never appeared in any catalog. Custom platform, Hale said, subsonic ammunition, reduced muzzle flash. Effective range depends entirely on the shooter. Wren picked it up. The weight was wrong. Too light, like holding a thought instead of a weapon. Her hands found the grip naturally. Index fingers settled beside the trigger guard without conscious thought. It feels, she started, like it was built for you. Hale almost smiled. It was, or rather, it was built for someone your size. We commissioned it 3 years ago for an operator who never materialized. Until now. He closed the case and handed her a smaller item. A device roughly the size of a cigarette lighter. Single button, small LED. Dead man switch. You check in every 12 hours by pressing that button. If 12 hours pass without a check-in, we assume you're compromised or dead. Mission scrubs. You're on your own. Wren turned the device over in her hands. And if I'm just unable to reach it, injured, pinned down, then you'd better find a way to reach it. She put the device in her chest pocket, close to her heart where she'd feel it. Gear, Hale continued. You'll carry the rifle, sidearm, 4 magazines total. Emergency rations, 100 hours worth. Water purification. Minimal medical kit. Cold weather gear rated to -40. Thermal suppression layer. That's it. Everything else is weight. Weight is heat. Heat is detection. Detection is death. He leaned back. You insert at 0400. Stormfront provides cover. After insertion, you're alone. Completely. No communication unless emergency. No support. No cavalry. Brennan spoke again. Calloway, she looked at him. I've been doing this for 14 years. I've seen operators with 1,000 hours of training freeze up the first time they go solo in denied territory. It's not like training. It's not like anything. The darkness, the cold, the knowledge that no one is coming, it breaks people. Is that a warning or a question? Both. Wren looked at the rifle on her lap, at the dead man's switch in her pocket, at the satellite imagery still glowing on Hale's tablet. I've been alone my whole life, petty officer. The only difference now is the rifle. Brennan held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded once. A small movement, but she understood what it meant. The helicopter flew on through the blizzard. Nobody spoke again for 40 minutes. Then Hale checked his watch. 10 minutes to insertion. Gear up. Ren pulled on the thermal suppression layer. It was thin, almost impossibly thin for the conditions she'd be entering. But that was the point. Bulk meant heat. Heat meant visibility. She needed to be cold, needed her body to register as rock, as snow, as nothing. She checked the rifle, magazine seated, round chambered, safety on. Checked the dead man's switch. LED glowed green. Timer started. Checked her hands. Steady. Heart rate 54. 2 minutes. Voss moved to the door. Hooked the fast rope to the anchor point. Tested it. Wind speed at ground level is 35 knots, he said. Gusting to 50. Visibility near zero. You'll have approximately 4 seconds on the rope before the pilot has to pull out. 4 seconds. Don't waste them. The door slid open. Cold didn't enter the cabin. It attacked. Like something alive, something angry. The temperature inside dropped 30 degrees in 2 seconds. Ren stood, moved to the door, looked down into absolute white darkness. Shadow 1. Hale's voice behind her. She turned. 60 hours ago, a SEAL team leader with 12 years of combat experience rappelled into this same area. He lasted 6 hours before detection found him. He's in a hospital in Germany right now, missing 3 fingers. Why are you telling me this, sir? Because I need you to understand that what you're about to do isn't training. It's not an exercise. It's not a test. His glacier eyes held hers. If you step off this aircraft, you are either coming back as a ghost who completed the mission, or you're not coming back at all. Ren turned back to the open door. The wind screamed. The darkness waited. I stopped coming back the moment I left that barracks, sir. She grabbed the rope and jumped. 4 seconds. The rope burned through her gloves, even through the cold. Wind caught her body and swung her sideways toward the cliff face, toward rock that would break bones. She squeezed the rope, controlled the swing, felt the pendulum peak and start to return. Her boots hit snow. 3 feet of powder. She sank to her thighs. Released the rope instantly. The helicopter was already gone, pulling up and away. The sound of rotors swallowed by the storm within 5 seconds. Then nothing. Silence so total it had physical weight. It pressed against her eardrums, filled her chest, made each heartbeat sound like a drum in an empty cathedral. Ren dropped into a crouch, let the snow settle over her shoulders, controlled her breathing. In through the nose, 4 seconds. Hold, 4 seconds. Out through the mouth, 8 seconds. Each exhale dispersed instantly in the wind. No vapor cloud, no visible sign of life. She was alone. Truly, completely alone. No team, no instructor, no base to fall back to. No bus at 0600 to take her somewhere warm. Just 18 kilometers of frozen, hostile territory between her and the mission. She checked her compass. Northeast. The ridge was northeast. She started moving. The first hour was calculation. Every step required a decision. Left foot or right? Weight on the heel or the toe? How deep would the snow hold before it crunched loud enough to carry? The wind was both enemy and friend. It covered her sound but stole her heat. Her body temperature was dropping. She felt it in stages, just like the briefing documents described. First hour, discomfort. Fingers stiffening inside the gloves. Toes losing sensation. Face going numb behind the balaclava. She kept moving. Hour 2. She smelled them before she saw them. Not literally, but something changed in the air. A disturbance. The way the wind carried a different texture when it had passed over human bodies. She dropped flat, became part of the ground in a single motion. Controller her breathing until her exhaled air dispersed before it traveled 6 inches from her face. The patrol appeared 40 meters to her left. 4 men moving in a diamond formation, well-equipped, night vision, rifles up, professional. They moved like men who expected contact, who wanted it. Ren pressed her face into the snow, closed her eyes, slowed her heart rate. 52. 50, 48. Each beat deliberate, each breath shallow enough to produce zero thermal signature. The patrol passed within 35 meters. She waited. 1 minute, 2, 3, 5. Then the thing that separated her from every other trainee who'd ever been in this position. She waited 5 more minutes after she was sure they were gone. Then she moved. Hour 4. Her hands stopped hurting. She knew what that meant. The briefing had been specific. Pain meant nerve function. When the pain stopped, damage was beginning. She couldn't afford to think about that. Damage was future. Movement was now. She'd covered 8 kilometers, 10 to go. Hour 5, second patrol. This one was closer, 20 meters. She heard the crunch of their boots, heard one of them cough, heard a low voice say something in a language she didn't understand. She was lying behind a snowdrift barely high enough to cover her body. If any of them had turned and looked, really looked, they might have seen the shape that didn't quite belong. None of them looked. They moved on. Ren exhaled a breath she'd been holding for 90 seconds. Her lungs burned. Her vision had started to narrow from oxygen deprivation. She forced herself to breathe. Slow, controlled. Hour 6. She reached a checkpoint, not something on Hale's maps, something new, or something they hadn't known about. 200 meters below her position, down a steep slope. Lights, dim, shielded, but visible through her scope. 3 men, a communication array. They were directly between her and the ridge. She studied the position for 15 minutes. The guards rotated in a pattern, 2 facing downslope, 1 monitoring equipment. Every 12 minutes, the equipment monitor stepped outside and scanned the surrounding terrain with a thermal imaging device. Every 12 minutes, the area she needed to cross was being swept for heat. Ren checked her body temperature. Her extremities were nearly hypothermic. Her core was holding, barely. The thermal suppression layer was doing its job, but there were limits. She waited for the scan, watched the guard lift the thermal imager and sweep a slow arc across the slope. The arc took 40 seconds. Then he went back inside. 12 minutes. Ren moved, not up and walking, crawling, flat against the snow, arms pulling, legs pushing, a movement so slow it wouldn't register as motion on any sensor. She covered 50 meters in the first cycle. When the guard came out for the next scan, she was motionless. A bump in the snow, a rock, nothing. He scanned. The arc passed directly over her position. He went back inside. She moved again. 50 more meters, then 50 more. 3 cycles, 36 minutes of crawling through snow that soaked through every layer she wore. Her body temperature dropped another degree, then another. She cleared the checkpoint. Hour 7. 1 kilometer to go. Her body was shutting down in sections now. Feet gone, hands barely functional, arms responding but slowly, core holding, mind clear. That was the part that mattered, the mind. Hour 7.5. She reached the ridge, a natural depression in the rock. Wind scoured, snow-filled, but deep enough to provide concealment. She slid into it like sliding into a grave, positioned herself face down with the rifle extended, cleared snow from the scope. The enemy command post was 290 meters below her position. She could see it clearly through the optics. Reinforced structure, thermal shielding, communications antenna, generator, guards. 2 at the entrance, 1 on a mounted position to the east, 1 patrolling the perimeter. She pressed the dead man's switch. Green light. 12-hour timer reset. Then Ren Calloway did the thing she was born to do. She disappeared. Not moved, not hid. Disappeared. Let her body temperature equalize with the snow around her. Let her heart rate drop to 46. Let her breathing become so shallow that no instrument on earth could distinguish it from wind. She became the ridge, became the rock, became the cold itself. And from that place of absolute stillness, she began to watch. Dawn came without color, gray replacing black slowly, like a bruise forming in reverse. Ren had been motionless for 3 hours. She hadn't shifted, hadn't adjusted, hadn't so much as flexed a finger. Through her scope, the command post came to life. Guards changed. A man emerged from the main structure, tall, authoritative, the body language of command. Others deferred to him, stepped aside, lowered their heads slightly. Viper. She memorized his face, his gait, the way he held his left hand slightly behind his back when he walked, the way he paused at the door and scanned the ridgeline before going back inside. He was careful. He knew someone was coming. She cataloged everything. Patrol patterns every 90 minutes, alternating routes. Communication checks every 2 hours on a satellite uplink. Supply movements. One vehicle arrival at irregular intervals, always from the south. Then at hour 15, she felt something that made her blood, already cold, go colder. She was being watched. Not by a patrol, not by a guard, by something patient, something skilled, something that had been there longer than she had. Ren didn't move, didn't react. But behind her scope, her eyes began a slow, methodical sweep of the opposing terrain. There, 1,200 meters across the valley, a shape in the rocks that was almost perfect, almost natural, but not quite. An enemy sniper, positioned to overwatch the command post, positioned to kill anyone who came to do exactly what she was doing. Ren's heart rate ticked up, 50, 52. She forced it back down. The enemy sniper hadn't seen her. She was certain of that. If he had, she'd already be dead. But he was looking, scanning, sweeping the same terrain she occupied with the patience of a man who had done this many times before. She was invisible, but invisible didn't mean safe. It meant she had a window, a narrow, fragile, temporary window before skill and persistence overcame even the best concealment. And across that valley, behind a rifle that had killed dozens of men, a killer was looking for her without knowing she was already looking back. She watched him for 6 hours. Not the command post, not Viper, the other sniper, the one across the valley who didn't know she existed yet. Every 40 minutes he made a micro-adjustment, a tiny shift, scope moving left to right, sweeping the terrain in disciplined sectors. Textbook technique. The kind taught in advanced sniper schools to operators with years of experience. He was scanning for exactly what she was, a ghost in the rocks. Ren studied him the way her father had taught her to study elk. Not the animal, the pattern, the rhythm, the breath of the thing you're watching. Every living creature on Earth has a cycle. Find the cycle and you own the moment between heartbeats. His cycle was 40 minutes. Sweep, settle, stillness. Then 40 minutes later, another sweep. Predictable. And predictable on a battlefield was the same as dead. But the shot was impossible. 1,200 meters. Wind gusting to 40 knots with no predictable lull lasting more than 3 seconds. Uphill angle across an open valley. Subsonic ammunition that would drop significantly at that range. Any ballistics calculator on Earth would flag this shot as no-go. Ren didn't have a ballistics calculator. She had something else. She had 18 hours of lying in the same position, breathing with the mountain, feeling the winds shift and gust and die and return. She didn't know the wind mathematically. She knew it the way a sailor knows the ocean, not by numbers, by feel. And she knew something else. She couldn't complete the primary mission while that sniper lived. He controlled the valley, every approach, every withdrawal, every line of sight. He owned it all. As long as he was breathing, she was trapped. She had to take the shot. Ren slowed her heart rate. 48, 46, 44. Each beat a conscious decision, each breath measured in fractions. She placed the crosshairs on his position, not on him, on the space where the bullet needed to arrive after wind, gravity, and distance had their say. A spot in empty air that existed only in her mind. The wind gusted, 35 knots, 40, 45. She waited. Her finger rested on the trigger. Not pressing, just touching. The way you touch a door handle before deciding whether to open it. She thought about her father, about the day he'd taught her that shooting wasn't about force. It was about patience, about knowing the exact moment when the world aligned. She thought about her mother, about the promise she'd made, about being strong. This was strong. This stillness, this waiting, this absolute refusal to rush. The wind dropped. Not completely. It never stopped completely up here, but it fell from 40 knots to 12 in the space of 2 seconds. A window, a breath between gusts. Wren fired. The rifle kicked. Subsonic round left the barrel with a sound no louder than a book dropping off a table. The bullet climbed, arced, fell. 1,200 meters of thin, frozen air. She watched through the scope. 8.7 seconds. The enemy sniper's position erupted. Snow and rock fragments sprayed outward. The shape that had been almost natural became obviously, violently unnatural. Direct hit. For exactly 3 seconds, the valley was silent. Wren allowed herself one full breath. One moment of something that wasn't quite relief, but lived in the same neighborhood. Then the world exploded. The first mortar round hit 35 meters below her position. The concussion reached her before the sound did. A pressure wave that compressed her chest and made her ears ring. Snow cascaded down from above, burying her scope. She cleared the lens, looked down. The command post had erupted into organized chaos. Men running but not panicking, taking positions. Someone was shouting orders, and a mortar team, she could see them now, pre-positioned behind the main structure, was adjusting their tube. They pre-sighted mortar positions to cover every conceivable sniper hide on the ridge. Her muzzle flash, barely a flicker with a suppressed weapon, had been enough. They triangulated her location in seconds. Second mortar round, 30 meters above her. Closer. Rock shrapnel rained down. A piece hit her left shoulder. She felt the impact but not the pain. The cold had eaten pain hours ago. They were bracketing her, one short, one long. The third round would split the difference. Wren grabbed her rifle and moved. Not thought, not decision, instinct. The kind that exists below consciousness in the animal brain that doesn't waste time with analysis. She rolled out of the depression, got her feet under her, threw herself over the ridge crest as the third mortar round hit her position dead center. The blast wave caught her midair, picked her up like a hand and threw her. She hit rocks on the backside of the ridge, left side, hip, ribs, shoulder, head. A sequence of impacts that her body registered as one continuous event of wrong. She slid 20 feet down loose scree before her hands found a hold. Stopped, lay still, assessed, rifle still in her grip. She'd held on to it through the blast, through the fall, through everything. Her hands had locked around it independent of conscious thought. Body functioning, mostly. Her left leg sent a signal that arrived as bright white noise. Something had happened to it during the fall. Torn. Broken. She didn't know yet and couldn't afford to check. Radio. She keyed the mic. Shadow 1 to Overwatch. Compromised. Taking indirect fire. Static. Then Hale's voice. Calm as a man ordering coffee. Shadow 1. Report status. Position destroyed. Enemy mortar response within 15 seconds of engagement. They had pre-sighted positions. Did you engage the primary target? Negative on Viper. Engaged and eliminated secondary target. Enemy counter-sniper at 1,200 meters. A pause. She could almost hear Hale processing that information. Recalculating. You hit a target at 1,200 meters with subsonic ammunition in 40-knot winds. Yes, sir. Another pause. Longer. Can you move? Wren tried her left leg, put weight on it. The white noise became a scream that traveled from her ankle to her skull and back. Affirmative. Mobility is compromised. Left leg is damaged. How damaged? She pressed her hand against her knee, swelling already. The joint felt loose in a way joints weren't supposed to feel. Significant, sir. Can you make 18 kilometers? 18 kilometers on this leg through enemy territory, with every patrol now alerted and converging on her position. I can make it, sir. Secondary extraction point, 18 kilometers northwest. Coordinates already in your GPS. You have 14 hours. 14 hours. Copy. Shadow 1. Hale's voice changed, not softer, deeper. The voice of a man about to say something he didn't want to say. If you can't make it, use the dead man's switch to scrub. We'll know. And then what, sir? And then you're on your own. The radio went silent. Ren lay on the rocks and did the math. 18 kilometers, 14 hours. That was 1.3 kilometers per hour. A healthy person walking casually covered 5 kilometers per hour. A trained operator in this terrain could manage 2. She needed 1.3 on a leg that might be broken. The math worked. Barely. She got up. The first step was the worst. Not because of the pain. She'd already compartmentalized that. But because of the sound. Her knee made a grinding noise that she felt in her teeth. Cartilage moving where cartilage shouldn't move. Structural failure in slow motion. She took the second step, then the third. Behind her, she could hear the mortar team adjusting. They'd realized the third round had hit, but the target might have survived. They were searching. A patrol would follow within minutes. Ren moved down the backside of the ridge, away from the command post, into terrain she hadn't scouted and couldn't predict. Every step was a gamble. The snow could hold her or swallow her. The rock beneath could be solid or rotten with ice. She fell twice in the first 100 meters, got up both times. The second time, her left knee buckled completely, and she went down face first into snow so deep it covered her head. For 3 seconds, she was buried, blind, suffocating. She clawed out, gasped, kept moving. Hour 1 of movement. She'd covered 1 kilometer, 17 to go. Her pace was right, but pace and endurance were different equations. Then she heard them, voices behind her. Not close, maybe 300 meters, but moving in her direction. A patrol sent to confirm the kill. Ren looked around. No cover worth a name. Open slope, scattered rocks too small to hide behind, snow too shallow to burrow into. Except there, a crevasse, a crack in the rock face barely wider than her shoulders. She lowered herself in. The space was so tight her chest compressed against stone on both sides. She pulled loose snow over her head and became nothing. The patrol arrived 4 minutes later. She heard boots on rock, heard breathing, heard a radio crackle and a voice reporting clipped, efficient phrases. Then a boot stepped onto the snow directly above her head. The weight compressed the snow onto her face. She couldn't breathe. The boot stayed. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Her lungs burned. Vision started to spot. The boot shifted. The man was turning, scanning, using her crevasse as a stepping stone to get a better view of the slope below. 20 seconds. 25. The boot lifted. The man moved on. Ren didn't breathe for another 30 seconds. When she finally inhaled, she did it so slowly that the air entering her lungs made no sound at all. The patrol swept the area for 15 more minutes. Thorough, disciplined. They checked behind every rock, every drift, every shadow. One of them passed the crevasse 3 more times. They never found her. When they moved on, Ren waited 10 minutes, then 10 more. Then she pulled herself out of the crack and started moving again. Hour 3, 4 kilometers covered, 14 to go. The leg was deteriorating. Each step took longer than the last. She could feel the joint swelling inside her boot, the pressure building against the laces. She stopped, pulled off the boot. Her knee was twice its normal size, purple-black. The skin stretched tight over fluid that shouldn't be there. She retied the boot tighter. The compression would help with swelling, but increase pain. Pain was data. She could process data. She kept moving. Hour 5, 7 kilometers covered, 11 to go. She'd found a rhythm, not a good rhythm, a survival rhythm. Left foot drag, right foot step. Left foot drag, right foot step. The grinding in her knee had become background noise, like static on a radio tuned between stations. Then the helicopter. She heard the rotors before she saw it, coming from the east, low and fast, thermal scanning. She could see the sensor pod mounted beneath the nose, sweeping the terrain in wide arcs. Wren went flat, pressed herself into a shallow depression, slowed her heart, slowed her breath, let her body become the same temperature as the snow beneath her. The helicopter passed overhead, kept going. She waited. It came back, circling now, tighter. They'd picked up something, maybe residual heat from her movement, maybe a track in the snow that didn't look right. The aircraft hovered 250 meters above her. The downwash from the rotors blasted snow in every direction, creating a whiteout beneath the aircraft. The thermal sensor pod pointed directly at the ground, directly at her. Wren pressed the dead man's switch. The LED changed from green to amber. 12-hour timer reset. At least they'd know she was still alive. The helicopter held position. 30 seconds. 45. A minute. The sensor pod moved in small increments, searching, scanning, hunting. Then it began to descend. They were going to put boots on the ground, check the area physically. Thermal hadn't found her, but someone on that aircraft didn't trust the equipment. Smart, thorough, exactly what she would have done. Wren had a choice. Stay and hope the ground team walked past her like every other patrol had. Or act. The helicopter banked slightly, angled its profile toward her as it maneuvered for a landing approach. And in that moment, 2, maybe 3 seconds, the tail rotor assembly was exposed. She didn't think. Her body moved with the autonomy of a system that had been designed for exactly this moment. Rifle up, scope to eye, crosshairs finding the tail rotor housing in a fraction of a second. 250 meters vertical. The aircraft was moving, crosswinds at altitude that existed in no training manual. She fired. The bullet traveled through vertical space that should have made accuracy impossible. Wind should have carried it wide. Gravity should have pulled it short. Every variable in the equation pointed to miss. But Wren Calloway didn't shoot with equations. The round entered the tail rotor housing. Metal shattered. The tail rotor seized. The helicopter didn't explode. It simply stopped being a helicopter and started being a falling object with spinning parts. The aircraft yawed violently. Once. Twice. The pilot fighting for control with everything he had. He was good. He managed to convert the spin into a controlled descent. The helicopter hit the ground hard 400 meters to the east. Skids buckled. Rotor blades chewed into snow and rock. But it didn't roll. Didn't burn. The crew was alive, which meant they'd be coming for her. Wren was already moving. Stealth was over. Speed was the only currency that mattered now. She ran. Or what passed for running on a leg that sent electric agony through her body with every impact. Left foot scream, right foot push, left foot scream, right foot push. Behind her, the downed helicopter's crew was scrambling out. She could hear shouts, commands, the sound of men who'd just been shot down organizing a pursuit with professional speed. She had maybe 5 minutes of lead. She used them. Kilometer 8, 9, 10. The terrain was working against her now. Uphill, rocky, snow thin enough that her boots scraped stone, leaving marks that anyone could follow. Her leg gave out at kilometer 11. Not gradually, not with warning. The knee simply stopped being a knee. She went down mid-stride, hit the ground with her full weight on her right side, and slid 3 meters on ice before stopping against a boulder. She lay there breathing hard. Heart rate spiked to 90, the highest it had been since insertion. Her body was telling her something very clear. Stop. Done. Finished. Wren pulled herself to sitting, looked at her leg. The knee was no longer swollen. It was deformed. The joint had shifted. Something structural had given way completely. She took the strap from her rifle sling, wrapped it around the knee, pulled it tight enough to make her vision go white, took a piece of debris, a flat rock, smooth enough, wedged it against the outside of the joint as a crude splint. 7 kilometers to go. She stood on one leg, tested the splinted knee. It held weight, barely. The pain was beyond anything she had language for. But it held. She moved. Kilometer 12. 13. The pursuit had gone quiet. Either they'd lost her trail in the rocky terrain, or they were being smart, hanging back, tracking, waiting for her to stop. She couldn't stop. Kilometer 14. Her hands had stopped working. She'd been gripping the rifle for so long that her fingers had frozen in position. She couldn't have released the weapon if she'd wanted to. It was part of her now, fused by cold and determination into a single system. Kilometer 15. She could see the extraction area, a clearing ahead, too open, too obvious. That was the false LZ. Commander Hale had planned for this. He knew the enemy would anticipate extraction points. She turned east, 100 meters through broken rock to the cliff face. The real extraction point. She found it. An anchor bolt drilled into the rock face. A small platform barely large enough for one person. Designed for a fast rope extraction under fire. Wren set up her final position. Back against the cliff, rifle aimed at the false LZ. 2 magazines left, 16 rounds. She keyed the radio. Shadow 1 to Overwatch, at secondary extraction point. Hale's voice, immediate. He'd been waiting. Shadow 1 status. At the extraction anchor. Left leg is non-functional. I'm not walking out of here, sir. Understood. Bird is spinning up. 8 minutes. Sir, the LZ is going to be hot. I count at least 2 pursuit teams converging from the south and east. Can you hold for 8 minutes? Wren looked at her rifle, at her frozen hands locked around it, at the 16 rounds that stood between her and the men coming to kill her. I can hold, sir. 8 minutes, Shadow 1. A pause. Don't die. The radio went silent. Wren breathed, checked her splint, adjusted her position against the rock, raised the rifle and sighted on the tree line beyond the false LZ. 8 minutes, 480 seconds. She started counting. At 112 seconds, the first enemy team broke cover. 4 men moving fast toward the clearing, professional movement, covering each other. They thought she was heading for the obvious extraction point. Wren let them enter the clearing, let them commit to the open ground. Then she fired. First round took the point man in the shoulder. He spun and dropped. The other 3 scattered, but they scattered toward cover that brought 2 of them closer to her actual position. She shifted. Second round. The nearest man stumbled. Hit. Return fire. Bullets cracked against the rock face above her head. Stone fragments rained down. She pressed into the cliff and made herself small. Made herself the thing she'd always been. Invisible. She fired again. Third round. Miss. Fourth round. The man behind the boulder stopped returning fire. The second team arrived from the east. 6 men. She counted muzzle flashes. More than she had ammunition for. Shadow 1, Bird is 3 minutes out. 3 minutes. She had 12 rounds and 10 enemies. She fired with the precision of someone who couldn't afford to miss. Every trigger pull was a conversation between her finger and the rifle. Between the weapon and the wind. Between the bullet and the target. Round 5, hit. Round 6, hit. Round 7, miss. The wind gusted at the worst possible moment. Round 8, hit. Return fire intensified. Rounds impacting all around her position. Rock dust in her eyes. She blinked, cleared, kept shooting. Round 9, 10, 11. 1 round left. She heard rotors coming in fast and low from the north. Not a Black Hawk. Something smaller, more agile. The extraction bird. Shadow 1, we see you. Fast rope deploying in 30 seconds. Pop smoke if you can. She didn't have smoke. She had one bullet in 10 seconds. An enemy fighter broke from cover, running toward her position. 30 meters. 20. She could see his face. Young, determined. Rifle coming up. Ren fired her last round. The man dropped at 15 meters. The fast rope hit the ground beside her. She grabbed it. Her frozen hands, locked in their grip for hours, closed around the rope with strength she didn't know she still had. She clipped her harness to the line. "Go!" she screamed into the radio. "Go now!" The helicopter surged upward. The rope went taut. Ren's boots left the ground as bullets tore through the space she'd occupied 1 second before. The cliff face blurred past. The wind hit her like a wall. She dangled on the rope, spinning, watching the ground fall away, watching muzzle flashes wink like angry stars below her. Then they cleared the ridge. The firing stopped. The helicopter accelerated north. In the valley, the command post, the dead sniper, the impossible shot, the 18 kilometers of frozen hell fell away behind her. Ren hung on the rope and looked down at the mountains, at the place that should have killed her, that had tried its absolute best to kill her. She was still breathing. Heart rate 62, steady. They pulled her into the cabin at 4,000 feet. 2 crew members grabbed her harness and hauled her over the edge while the helicopter banked north. She hit the deck hard. Her left leg folded wrong, and the pain hit so fast it whited out her vision for 2 full seconds. "Medic!" someone yelled. Hands on her, cutting away the makeshift splint, pulling her boot off with care that still felt like violence. Ren gripped the cargo netting above her head and bit down on nothing. "Knee is dislocated," the medic said. "Possible fracture below the joint. Ligament damage." "Jesus, how long were you on this?" 14 hours, Ren said. The medic looked at her like she'd told him she'd walked on water. He didn't say anything, just started working. Commander Hale was sitting across the cabin. She hadn't seen him when they pulled her in. He was just there, the way he was always just there, watching with those glacier eyes that registered everything and revealed nothing. He waited until the medic had stabilized her leg, until the shaking in her hands, not cold this time, pure adrenaline dump, had slowed to a tremor, until her breathing came back under 60. Then he leaned forward and handed her a thermos. She looked at it. "Coffee," he said. "Real coffee, not that powder they give trainees." Ren took it, unscrewed the cap with fingers that barely cooperated. The heat hit her palms first, then her chest when she drank. It was the most violent sensation she'd experienced in 24 hours, and that included being hit by a mortar blast. "Did I complete the mission, sir?" Hale pulled out his tablet, turned it toward her. Satellite imagery, the enemy command post from above. But different now. The organized patterns she'd observed for hours were gone. What she saw was chaos. Men moving in random directions, vehicles departing at speed, the communication antenna dark. "The sniper you eliminated," Hale said. "Do you know who he was?" "No, sir." "His call sign was Falcon. Real name doesn't matter. What matters is that he was the enemy's field intelligence coordinator, second in command of the entire regional network. Every piece of information flowing through that sector ran through him." Ren stared at the tablet. The counter-sniper was their intelligence chief. He was both. Dual role. The enemy doesn't have unlimited personnel. Their best people wear multiple hats. Hale zoomed the image. When you killed Falcon, you didn't just remove a sniper. You severed the nervous system of their entire operation. Within 2 hours, their command structure began to fragment. Communication protocols broke down. Patrol coordination collapsed. He closed the image, opened another, a wider view showing Allied forces. Blue markers moving through terrain that had been impassable for months. "Because of what you did, we have a 72-hour window. Right now, as we speak, 3 Allied units are pushing through that sector unopposed. The weapons pipeline is being dismantled." Ren looked at the blue markers. Each one represented soldiers, real people moving safely through a corridor she had opened by lying in the snow and refusing to die. What about Viper, sir, the primary target? Still active, but his operation is crippled. Without Falcon, without the intelligence network, he's operating blind. Hale put the tablet away. We'll get him. You gave us the opening. The helicopter flew on. The medic finished his work. Splint, compression, IV fluids for dehydration. He gave her a look before moving away. The look said, you shouldn't be conscious right now, let alone talking. Ren drank the coffee, let the heat spread through her body, felt the shivers start as her core temperature began to rise. The dangerous part. The rewarming. When blood from cold extremities flows back to the heart, and the heart doesn't always appreciate the surprise. Sir, she said. Hale looked at her. The mission brief said observation and interdiction. Primary mission was intelligence gathering, but you knew about the counter sniper. You knew he was there. It wasn't a question. Hale treated it like one anyway. We suspected. You sent me to kill him. That was always the real objective. Hale was quiet for a long time. The helicopter's engine filled the silence. The mission was what I told you. Observation, intelligence. But yes, I knew about Falcon. I knew he was the reason every team we'd sent had failed. And I knew that the only way to reach him was to send someone he couldn't see. You could have told me. No, I couldn't. He leaned forward. If I'd told you the primary objective was to kill a specific sniper at 1,200 meters with subsonic ammunition in impossible conditions, what would you have done? Ren thought about it honestly. I would have said it was impossible, sir. Exactly. And you would have been right. It is impossible. By every measure, every calculation, every standard of marksmanship, that shot cannot be made. He paused. But you made it. Because you weren't trying to make an impossible shot. You were solving a problem. You were removing an obstacle between you and survival. You used me, sir. I deployed you. There's a difference. Is there? Hale held her gaze. Something shifted in his expression. Not guilt, he wasn't built for guilt, but acknowledgement. The recognition that what he'd asked of her went beyond normal orders. Calloway, I sent 4 operators into those mountains before you, the best I had. 2 are dead, 2 are in hospitals. I didn't send you because you were expendable. I sent you because you were the only person who could survive what those mountains demanded. And if I hadn't survived, then I would have been wrong, and I would have carried that. His voice dropped. I carry the other 4 every day. 2 more names wouldn't have made the weight lighter, but it would have meant I'd run out of options. Ren let that settle. The helicopter began its descent. Through the window, she could see lights below, a base that wasn't on any map she'd ever studied. What happens now, sir? Hale stood as the aircraft flared for landing. Now you have a choice. The helicopter touched down. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. But it felt different this time. Not hostile, not punishing, just cold. What choice? Ren asked. We'll get to that. First you heal. The medical facility was aggressive in its warmth. After 26 hours in sub-zero conditions, the 68-degree building felt like stepping into an oven. Ren's skin burned. Her fingers throbbed as blood returned to capillaries that had shut down to preserve her core. The doctors were military, but not standard military. No rank insignia, no unit patches. They worked on her leg with an efficiency that suggested they treated injuries like this before. Injuries sustained by people doing things that didn't officially happen. Hairline fracture of the tibial plateau, the orthopedic surgeon said. Anterior cruciate ligament, torn. Medial collateral ligament, partially torn. Severe soft tissue damage to the entire joint capsule. He looked at her over his glasses. The look doctors give when they're about to say something they know the patient won't want to hear. How long were you mobile after this injury occurred? 14 hours approximately. On foot? Yes, sir. Carrying weight? Rifle and survival gear? Maybe 30 pounds. He set down her chart. I've been doing this for 22 years. I've treated special operations personnel from every branch. I have never seen someone remain ambulatory on this injury for 14 hours in extreme conditions. The fact that you didn't go into shock, I don't go into shock easily, sir. Clearly. He picked the chart back up. 6 weeks minimum before I'll consider clearing you for any physical activity. 8 is more likely. You'll need surgery. We can do it here, followed by intensive rehabilitation. When can I train, sir? The surgeon laughed, stopped when he saw her face. Miss Calloway, I just told you that your knee is held together by swelling and stubbornness. Training is not when... He stared at her, then sighed the sigh of a man who'd had this conversation with people like her before and lost every time. 8 weeks minimum, and that's light duty only. No running, no impact, no load bearing. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me, listen to me. If you push this too fast, you'll need a knee replacement before you're 30. After the examination, they moved her to a recovery room. Small, clean, a single bunk, a desk, a window that looked out onto a training compound she'd never seen in any military publication. Wren sat on the bunk, leg elevated, ice pack strapped to the knee that had carried her 18 kilometers through hell. She pulled out her phone. 7 messages now. Dad, 4 messages, each one more worried than the last. The progression was a timeline of a father's anxiety. Casual question, gentle follow-up, direct concern, barely controlled panic. Bryn, 2 messages, shorter, more measured, but she could hear the worry beneath the calm. The way you hear water running under ice. Amy, 1 message, a photo of herself holding a sign that read, "Congrats, soldier girl," with question marks drawn around it. "Call me when you can. Miss you so much." Wren closed her eyes, pressed the phone against her chest. She composed a single message, typed it 3 times before the words felt right. "I'm okay. Had a training setback. Minor injury, nothing serious. I'm at a recovery facility stateside. Can't call right now, but I will soon. I love you all. Tell Bryn the shirt looks great." She sent it to all 3, put the phone on the desk, face up this time. A knock at the door. Heavy, confident. The knock of someone who didn't wait for permission, but had enough respect to announce themselves first. "Come in." Petty Officer Cade Brennan. She recognized the type before she recognized the rank. 20-plus years of special operations written into every line of his face. Hands that had done things that would never appear in any report. Eyes that had seen the cost and decided to keep paying it. He carried a folder, dropped it on the desk without ceremony. "Your official file," he said. As of 0800 this morning, Wren Calloway was administratively withdrawn from basic training at Fort Denali. Reason? Medical discharge due to training injury. Character of discharge, honorable. Wren looked at the folder. Is that what happened? That's the story, the only story. He moved to the window. Your family has been notified. You sustained an injury during a training exercise. You're recovering at a stateside facility. You'll be released within 8 weeks to return to civilian life. Civilian life? That's what the world knows. That's what your parents know. That's what your sister knows. He turned back. The mission never happened. The sniper you killed doesn't exist in any report we'll ever file. The intelligence you gathered is credited to satellite reconnaissance. The Allied forces moving through that sector right now think they got lucky with weather and timing. Nobody knows. Nobody can know. That's the price. He studied her face, not her reaction, her capacity, gauging whether she could carry this weight. Most people break under erasure, Calloway. They need recognition, need someone to know what they sacrificed, need the story to be told. Wren thought about her squad at Fort Denali, the drainage ditch, 5 hours of lying still while her entire team forgot she existed. She thought about 16 weeks of being the one nobody noticed, the one who was too small, too quiet, too invisible to matter. I've been erased my whole life, Senior Chief. People have been looking through me since I was 12 years old. The difference is, now it's useful. Something shifted in his expression. A micro-movement, the kind of response that in his world was equivalent to a standing ovation. Commander Hale told me you'd say that. Am I that predictable? No, he's that good at reading people. It's why he does what he does. Brennan sat on the edge of the desk. Let me tell you something about what you accomplished out there. And I need you to hear this because what I'm about to say matters. I'm listening. The enemy sniper you eliminated, call sign Falcon. We've been tracking him for 3 years. 12-year veteran of their Special Operations Forces. 37 confirmed kills. 37 that we know about. His actual number is probably double that. Wren said nothing. He was considered one of the 5 most dangerous snipers operating in any theater worldwide. 3 separate Allied Special Operations teams were tasked with his elimination over the past 18 months. All failed. 2 operators killed in those attempts. Why are you telling me this, Senior Chief? Because you need to understand the scale of what you did. Brennan leaned forward. You, a 23-year-old trainee who failed basic qualification 12 hours before insertion, killed one of the most lethal human beings on the planet, at a range and in conditions that every ballistics expert would classify as impossible. It didn't feel impossible. That's the point, Brennan stood. That's exactly the point. For a normal sniper, even an extraordinary one, that shot requires calculation, mathematics, adjustment. And at that range, in that wind, the math doesn't work. The variables are too extreme. So how did I make it? Because you didn't calculate. You felt it. The wind, the range, the bullet's path. You processed it at a level below conscious thought. He moved toward the door. We have a word for that, Calloway. We call it instinct. And it cannot be taught. It cannot be trained. You either have it or you don't. He opened the door, paused. Commander Hale found you because he believes in looking where nobody else looks. In the drainage ditches, in the failed qualifications, in the people the system throws away because they don't fit the standard model. His voice carried something she hadn't heard from any military authority in her entire training. Respect. He was right about you, and in 23 years I've seen him be wrong exactly twice. He left. Wren sat alone. The folder on the desk, her official story, her cover, the lie the world would believe, sat unopened. She didn't need to read it. She knew what it said. Wren Calloway, failed, discharged, done. The woman who sat in this room was someone else entirely. Her phone buzzed. Dad. A reply. Oh, kiddo, I'm so relieved to hear from you. Bryn and I have been worried sick. A training injury. Are you sure you're okay? Do you need us to come? Bryn hasn't taken off that army shirt in 3 days. She's so proud of you. We all are, no matter what. Just come home safe. That's all that matters. We love you. Wren read it twice, 3 times, pressed her thumb against the screen as if she could touch her father's hand through the glass. She typed, I'm safe, Dad. I promise I'll tell you everything I can when I see you. A lie inside a truth. She would tell them everything she could, which was almost nothing. She set the phone down, looked at the window. Outside, new recruits were running drills. Standard formation, standard exercises. The same system that had measured her and declared her insufficient. They ran in straight lines, in perfect cadence, fitting perfectly into boxes built for bodies larger than hers. Somewhere beyond those training grounds was a mountain range where she'd been invisible, where she'd killed a man most special operations teams couldn't touch, where she'd crawled 18 kilometers on a broken leg through enemy territory and survived. Those recruits would never know about it. Nobody would ever know about it. And for the first time, Wren Calloway understood that she was okay with that. Walter Reed Medical Center. Week 1. Surgery on day 3. 6 hours. The doctors rebuilt her knee with pins and grafts in patience. When she woke, her father was sitting beside the bed. He didn't speak for 5 minutes, just held her hand. Finally, "Your mom would be proud. I'm proud." Ren's eyes filled. "I failed, Dad. I washed out of basic." "No." Garrett's voice was firm. "You became what I always knew you were. Took me 23 years to see it clearly, but I see you now." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a photograph. Baby Ren, maybe 2 months old. Garrett holding her, looking at the camera with an expression Ren had never seen on his face before. Wonder. She turned it over. Written on the back in her father's handwriting, faded but legible. "My little ghost. She'll save lives someday." March 2001. "You knew," Ren whispered. "When I was born, you knew. Not the details, not the how, but I knew you were different. The way you'd go quiet and still, even as a baby. The way you'd watch everything, like you were learning something the rest of us couldn't see." He squeezed her hand. "When your mama was dying, she told me to help you understand that gift. That being able to disappear wasn't something to fix. It was something to use. I've been trying to teach you that for 23 years. Looks like it finally took." Week 2. Bryn visited. Her sister burst through the door with the energy of a 19-year-old who'd been holding worry for too long. She hugged Ren carefully, mindful of the leg, but tight. "You're my hero," Bryn said. "I don't care what happened." She pulled out her phone, showed Ren photos. A shooting club, 32 girls, college age, some younger, all holding rifles, all looking at the camera with expressions that range from nervous to determined to fierce. "Started it last month, because of you. Girls who felt too small, too weak, too invisible." Bryn smiled. "They have somewhere now, someone to look up to." "I didn't do anything special." "Yes, you did. You tried. You showed up. You didn't let them make you quit." Bryn sat on the edge of the bed. "Half these girls wanted to quit after the first week. I told them about you, about how you trained for 16 weeks even when everyone said you couldn't. They stayed." The nightmares started week 2. 3 times a night, Ren woke screaming, sheets soaked, heart racing. The images were always the same. Falcon's position exploding. Snow and rock and blood spraying outward. The young enemy soldier at 15 meters. The one she'd shot with her last round. His face, maybe 19, maybe 20. The helicopter crew scrambling from the wreckage. Men she'd tried to kill who were probably someone's sons, someone's brothers. Week 3. A psychiatrist came. Dr. Iris Bridgewater, mid-40s, kind eyes. The kind of calm that came from hearing terrible things and not being broken by them. "Classic acute stress response," she said after their first session. "What most people call PTSD. I'm fine. You lost 11 pounds in 26 hours, nearly died from hypothermia and kidney failure, killed 11 people in combat. You're not fine." Ren looked at her hands. "I don't know if I'm a soldier or a murderer. You're a person who did what was necessary to survive and to protect others. Those aren't mutually exclusive with feeling the weight of it." Dr. Bridgewater leaned forward. "The fact that you're having nightmares, the fact that you see their faces, that's not weakness. That's proof you're still human. The day it stops bothering you is the day you've lost something that matters." Week 4. More visitors. Petty Officer Brennan entered, hesitant, not his usual confidence. "Calloway, I owe you an apology." Ren blinked. "For what?" "For what I said on the helicopter, that you hadn't completed basic, that you were untested. I was wrong, completely wrong." He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo, a baby, 2 months old, pink blanket, sleeping. "I named her Ren." The words hit harder than she expected. "Because I want her to grow up knowing women like you exist, and I want to be the kind of father who sees her the way you should have been seen from the start. He set a small box on the bed, wooden, hand-carved. Inside was a miniature rifle, exquisitely detailed, maybe 8 inches long. I'm making one for my daughter, for when she's old enough to understand. He turned it over. On the stock, carved into the wood, check your assumptions. Cade Brennan, March 2024. Week 5, Sergeant Thorne appeared, the instructor who'd told her to pack her gear, who delivered the news that her body couldn't do what the military needed. He stood in the doorway for a long moment before speaking. I failed you, Calloway. Should have seen what Commander Hale saw. You were following the rules, Sergeant. I've been teaching for 15 years. Thought I knew what strong looked like. He pulled papers from his bag. New training manual, still in draft. Working title, Calloway Protocol, Identifying Non-Traditional Combat Assets. He set it on the desk. You're changing how we train, how we see people. That matters more than you know. Week 6. Commander Hale brought a folder. Classified, but you should know. Inside were intelligence reports, maps, photographs. Information recovered from Falcon's position had led to 14 other weapons caches. Allied forces had dismantled them all. The inventory was staggering. 240 IEDs, 1,800 small arms, 60 RPGs. Enough explosive material to level a city block. Conservative estimate, Hale said. You saved 200 lives, maybe 500. Wren looked at the numbers. They felt abstract, unreal. I killed 11 people for it. Yes, that's the cost. And you'll carry it forever. But so will 200 families who still have sons, daughters, parents. He closed the folder. I didn't come here to make you feel better. I came to make sure you understand the math. What you did matters. That doesn't erase the weight. It just means the weight has purpose. Week 6, the offer. Hale sat in the chair beside her bed, not at the desk, beside her, like this was personal. We have a unit, special operations, people like you, invisible operators. He pulled out a folder, official, heavy. I can get you in, bypass basic, direct commission, lieutenant rank, full medical coverage, signing bonus. He set the folder on her lap. You'd be the best we have. Wren looked at the folder, at the future it represented. Career, purpose, identity. Then she looked out the window. At the therapist's office across campus where Dr. Bridgewater helped broken soldiers find their way back. Sir, I need to ask, why did you really pick me? Hale was quiet for a moment. Your father taught me something at Fort Benning in 1998. He said the best operators aren't the ones who want glory, they're the ones who'll do what's necessary and carry the weight afterward. He said you were like that. Even at 7 years old, after your mom died, you went silent, but you were listening, learning, becoming. And now? Now you're exactly what he said you'd be. Wren picked up the folder, felt its weight, opened it. Lieutenant bars, signing papers, a life lived in shadows. She closed it, set it aside. Thank you, sir, but no. Hale's expression shifted. Surprise, respect. No? I became what you needed on that mountain, but I don't know if that's what I need. She looked at him directly. I have to figure out who I am when I'm not pulling a trigger. Hale nodded slowly. Your father would understand. He left Spec Ops too, became a teacher instead. He stood, held out his hand. If you ever change your mind, the door's open. They shook. He left. Wren sat alone with the folder she'd refused and felt, for the first time in weeks, like she'd made the right choice. Montana, March 2029, 5 years later. Wren Calloway was 28 years old. She walked with a cane. Her left knee ached when rain was coming. She'd learned to predict weather better than any meteorologist just by the grinding sensation in her joint. The sign outside her office read, Mountain View Counseling, veterans and first responders. She saw 6 clients a day, sometimes 7, all of them carrying weight they couldn't put down. Tuesday afternoon, a young woman, 21, Army, just back from deployment. "I keep seeing his face," the woman said. "The guy I shot. He was just doing his job, just like me, and I killed him." Ren leaned forward. "I know. I see them too." "Does it get better?" "It gets different. You learn to carry it. But here's what someone told me once. Carrying the weight means you're still human. The day it doesn't bother you, that's when you've lost something." The woman's eyes filled. "So I just live with this forever?" "You live with it, but you don't live with it alone." Ren handed her a card. "Group therapy, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Other people who understand, who carry the same weight, it helps." After the session, Ren locked up. Her father was waiting outside. Garrett Calloway, 53 now, retired from ranching. He spent his days helping Ren with the practice and teaching kids to shoot at the local range. They drove to the ranch together, sat on the porch as the sun set over the mountains. "Your mom would be proud," Garrett said. "You found your way. Took me 5 years. Took me 30 to find mine. You're ahead of schedule." Ren's phone rang. Bryn. Her sister was a high school teacher now. Ran a shooting program for girls. 120 members across 3 schools. "Sis, we had 30 new girls join this month. They all asked about you." "What'd you tell them?" "That my sister proved strong doesn't mean loud. That quiet is power." After the call, Ren walked to the barn, to her father's old shooting range. The rifle from the mission hung on the wall, decommissioned, never fired since that day. She hadn't touched it in 5 years. She took it down, held it, felt its weight, remembered the cold, the wind, the 1,200-meter shot that shouldn't have been possible. Remembered Falcon, the young soldier at 15 meters, the 11 lives she'd taken to save 200. Remembered who she'd been in those mountains. Ghost, invisible, weapon. She put the rifle back on the wall, walked outside. Montana sunset painting the sky orange and purple and gold. Ren stood in her father's field and let herself feel it all. The pride, the shame, the weight, the purpose. She thought about the choice Commander Hale had offered, the life she'd refused. And she knew, standing there in the quiet with her father's rifle behind her and her clients' faces in her mind, that she'd made the right decision. Being strong enough to pull the trigger meant being strong enough to put the gun down. She walked back to the house. Her father was making dinner. Through the window, she could see him moving in the kitchen, the man who'd taught her to shoot, who'd prepared her for a war she didn't know was coming, who'd loved her enough to let her find her own way home. Ren opened the door and stepped inside. The warmth wrapped around her like a promise, like forgiveness, like peace. And in that moment, Ren Calloway understood something that had taken her 28 years to learn. Silence wasn't emptiness. It was the sound of someone who'd been to war and chosen to come home. She sat down at the table with her father. They're fought in quiet rooms with broken people who need someone to tell them they're not alone. She sat down at the table with her father. They ate dinner, talked about the day, made plans for tomorrow. Outside, the Montana night settled over the ranch. Stars came out. The wind whispered through the pines. And somewhere in the darkness, a ghost who'd learned to be human again closed her eyes and slept without nightmares for the first time in 5 years. The war was over. The healing had just begun. And for Ren Calloway, that was enough.